the finance director for the SBDC Lead Center, and we're located in Arcata, California at Humboldt State University. And today we're going to be going over some concepts related to the SBDC grant that we have that's on a calendar year. And these are some kind of key concepts related to the grant, and maybe reminders if you've been doing this for a while, or just kind of some key topics if you're brand new to this. So the first one is regarding the financial guidance for the SBDC program. So if you're wondering where you should look for the rules and regulations for the administration of the SBDC program, guidance can be found in the annual OSBDC program announcement. And I can send those links to you. You can just look it up online if you put in 2017 SBDC program announcement. It should pop up. It's a very long, probably 100-page, 70-page document, which outlines, it's the instructions for the lead center on how to submit the grant every year. So every single year, we have to submit a master grant proposal to Washington, D.C. And this document tells us what we need to do and what we need to include. It also informs centers and the entire program about definitions for program income, what the rules are for program income as an example, or what the rules are for what's allowable for spending the federal money, things like that. It can be a little bit confusing because you do have to remember that it's the instructions for submitting the grant proposal for the lead center, but it is also the guidance for how to administer the grant, and that flows down into the sub-awards that we send out to each of the county SBDC service centers. Then the other place you can look if you need to look for guidance is the uniform guidance. And so those are the federal regulations for all federal programs. And hopefully you're familiar with those for cost principles, for audits, for administrative requirements for all federal grants. And of course, the SBDC grant is federal, and so it falls underneath that guidance. And then the other kind of rules or policies that govern the SBDC program is actually the service center host institution policies and procedures. So if you don't see something that is specifically outlined in your program announcement and the uniform guidance, then both of those refer to your host institution and say that you should be following your institutional policies and procedures. And so when we send out the sub-award agreements each year, we take language from the national contract, the program announcement, and the notice of award that we get, and that is put in the service center contract. But it ultimately, it comes from what we get from Washington, D.C. Are there any questions about that? Okay. Let's see. And Rebecca, I'm just wondering, could you maybe put a call in to Mendocino and see if they're going to join us?
I think Marianne is here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm not tracking. Okay, you are.
I'm here.
Great.
I'm here.
Perfect. Okay.
I'm here.
Thank you. Just double checking. So this is kind of a new director training, so just making sure that our new director's here. All right, sorry. And let's see, any questions though about this part of where you would look for, if there's a question that you aren't able to answer, if I'm not able to answer it, this is where you would look. So, all right. And
I do have a question. I'm sorry, I keep so in the previous slide, so was there a URL that you posted in the chat for this, or?
Oh, I did not. Okay, let me figure out how to do that and not get too sidetracked.
Yeah, or you can put it, it's okay, you can even put it in the slides, and then just so that it's. Yeah,
let's just see, like if we do a quick Google search. So 2017 SBDC program announcement. It actually might be kind of good to have it in the slide and then it just is there too.
Yeah, that would be fine. You don't have to take the time now, but just.
But yeah, no, I found it. And it's really nice because one of the things that that SBDC does when they put out this announcement is that they will highlight in yellow any of the major changes that happen. So if you read it the year before, then they will highlight the changes for you. And so you can say, oh, okay, I need to pay attention to these changes for the coming year.
Great. And are there subsequent 2 items also in that same one, or are there different?
8:14, Dennis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, Marianne.
Are there the subsequent 2 items that you have listed on this slide? Are they also in that same document, or are they on a different?
Oh, good point. So I just posted what the program announcement link was for. The uniform guidance, we can do a search for that. There's a couple different ways you can access that. So it's uniform. We did actually, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, the Lead Center purchased a bound copy of the uniform guidance for every service center. So that should be in your library, hopefully in the director's office or the fiscal office that you should have reference to. The only issue is that there are continuous updates to it. So there can be some gray areas and things that get clarified. And so then there is new guidance that happens. Just kind of like federal law or something, that if there's confusion, then there will be, different revisions that happen. William, do you know the best link that you would refer people to? I'm kind of looking up the federalregister.gov link. Would you refer people to that, or do you know? We can get back to people too.
How do I?
Am I catching you off guard, William? Oh, do you need to be unmuted?
Oh,
maybe?
you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know I had audio. I have a PDF I can send to people that has a copy of the CFR that I use. As far as the best web link, I'll have to get back to you on that. I was just looking it up myself.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. So, all right. Any other questions about that? Okay. And so just one note about the service center policies and procedures. It's, this is, oh, and someone's posting a link too. Okay, great. So that is one reason to have really strong policies and procedures related to your service center. And I know for some of the newer nonprofits, that's kind of a work in progress, but that is always something that if you're following your policies and procedures and they are in line with federal law, that that is helpful. So, all right. Federal expenditures are only for goods and services provided or received during the program year, and the program year is on a calendar year basis, which is January through December. So this is kind of the key principle to please remember that the federal grant is January through December, and some people have a bookkeeping system which is on a fiscal year, but we need to be able to track the expenses January through December. And so there might be different ways that you do that in your accounting system. At HSU, we have each of our grants is set up as a fund number. And so each time we have a new calendar year grant, we get a different fund number. So the fund number might be 100 one year and 200 the next year and 300 the next year, because our bookkeeping system is on a state fiscal year, so it starts July 1st, and we need a way to be able to track across 2 different periods. And we've also been able to work with our IT staff to get certain reports that will show 12 months, January through December, so that we're not constantly having to break out an adding machine and add up the first part of the year, January through June, and then the second part of the year. We can actually see those expenses together and choose which time frames we want. So that might be some options at your host, as well as that there might be fiscal reports that don't currently exist, but could be created if someone knows that there's a need. And so that's taken several years for us to figure that out and find out who the right person is for us to talk to, etc. Let's see, and these same rules apply for cash match expenses and in-kind donations. So it is just critically important to be able to track whatever expenditures are for goods and services that are provided or received, that's another point, during the calendar year. And we have cash match grants that we use, and they go for 3 years, but we need to have a good system where we can track which expenses are for a calendar year and for the next calendar year. And it's not about when they get posted. So this is where, especially when you're new, you can really mess up, is that there's expenses, there's invoices or goods and services that happen in December. You're not going to get the bills until the beginning of January. They're going to get posted in January, but they need to be declared on your final closeout invoice as December expenses. And so what we do at HSU is they're posted in January, and that's fine, but because they're posted under Fund 900 or whatever the fund number is, we know that we only are charging expenses to Fund 900 for 2016 as an example, and we'll have a different fund number for 2017, so we can do a cutoff in that way. For cash match, it's more manual, and we will look at the expenses when the month of January's books close, which is usually mid-February. We will pull it down into Excel, and I'll put a column showing 2016 expenses and then 2017 expenses, reconcile it to our general ledger totals to make sure that it does reconcile. but I have to sort of manually note which expenses go to which calendar year and do it that way. Questions about this? Okay. And you can also do little tricks too. You could, for example, decide to stop spending your cash match at, spend a lot up front and not spend it in the last month of the year. So you don't have expenses that are posting up until the end. So there's less manual work, and it's posting to your federal expenses or something like that, little tricks about how you're doing your spend down that can help. And if you have a GoBiz grant, GoBiz is counted as cash match. It's a state cash match source that HSU sends in, has a contract that we send out for subawards for SBDC plus the cash match, which is GoBiz. Okay. So program income. So all the rules for all the different varieties of expenses, the federal money, the cash match, and then in-kind donations and program income all have the same rules of spending. And program income is the one type of funding that it is only for related to collecting income that's generated from participants attending training events. That is the only type of revenue that would be recorded to a program income fund or org, or whatever, however you're tracking it at your center or your host. So program income means gross income earned by the recipient that is directly generated by a supported activity or earned as a result of the award. And so if you want to reference that more, you can look up the uniform guidance section that's referenced there. Program income must be used to further the objective of the SBDC program and cannot be used for other purposes. And that's taken from the SBA program announcement, which we had talked about earlier. It needs to be recorded in a separate account, and carryover program income, the carryover of the program income balance, it goes forward every year. That could have been worded better. So there's going to be a dollar amount balance at the bottom of the program income report at the end of 2016. And when we start 2017, that amount is going to move to the top page of the program income report, and that amount is carrying over into the next year. And so particularly for junior colleges, community colleges, we're always trying to double check that the program income funds are not being kept in some type of account that gets swept at the end of a fiscal year. And so whatever you need to do to ensure that that balance carries over. Some centers, it's been that at the end of a fiscal year, you have to take that balance and do a journal entry into the next fiscal year, or different methods, or maybe you have a type of trust account that allows you to keep the income and carry it over. Keep documentation on program income sources and uses. So it's always a bit frustrating because program income, it's actually, there's not a lot of revenue, and therefore there's not a lot of expenses related to it. But there is a somewhat onerous amount of documentation that is required. There's a training file for each training, and we need to be able to reconcile if there was a training that 20 people attended and those 20 people paid $20, we have to be able to locate that the $20 from all those people was actually collected and deposited at the host and find it on the general ledger. And all of this is, of course, because it would be very easy for someone who's collecting that money to do something like take it for personal use, or it's a risk area. So that's why there's so many constraints on it, because someone could do something illegal here and have a personal benefit. So that's the reason for it. Any questions about this? Okay, so
Marianne,
yeah.
Hi. So just on program income, the way to think about that for me is things like you just mentioned: training, seminars, workshops.
Yeah.
Those are the type of things when you say program income that's more likely to be in this context for SBDC.
Yeah.
Is there
And it
anything?
would only, yeah, and it would only be just the fee that the participants pay. So I guess that's another thing I could clarify, is that there are some centers that maybe Alameda's had this before, that they will have a city or a county give them a grant for $5,000, and the requirements of the grant are to do 5 workshops for $1,000 a piece. And so they get that money from the county or the city, and then plus they can also charge the $20 or something for people to attend. The money that they're getting from the county or the city would actually be considered cash match. That's a cash match contract, and you set it up as a separate contract. The money that's collected from the individuals goes into program income revenue. And the good news about that is that then you're capturing extra cash match from the city or the county. Program income is not cash match, and since SBDC program is a matching grant, we're always trying to figure out and maximize the potential for matching funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, and speaking of matching funds, so the SBDC grant requires that 100% of the federal grant is matched, and it's a cost sharing or matching means the portion of the project costs not paid by the federal funds. So the idea here is that the federal government's giving us money for this program, and they want to see that there's local community support for the program as well, and so that it's kind of a joint venture. And the match can come from cash at the local level from counties or cities. And then we also have a state matching grant called GoBiz. It goes through the governor's office. And that contract comes from Humboldt State, like the SBDC one does. And so each quarter, your host is filling out and turning in 2 quarterly invoices, one for if you have the GoBiz, not every center has it. And then there's also in kind. So those are donations that people can give of time or facilities. The main one is facilities, that Napa, for example, or Solano, different community colleges, we can do a market rate comparison of what the comparable office space would be, the going rate in the area, and we can do an in-kind donation from the host for free rent and utilities for different centers. and then waived indirect. And so that is a percentage of, for a lot of centers, it's 24%. Of all of the federal and cash expenditures. And so that is supposed to be this F&A sort of lump sum contribution by the host that is showing effort towards the SBDC program, which is not line itemed out in the budget and actuals. So at HSU, the waived indirect would account for, let's see, William's time as our compliance officer. His time isn't listed in our budget specifically. It's just part of our host. The director of sponsored programs, he spends time on our project. There's an analyst that is assigned a portion of their time to our project. All the accounting staff, payroll staff, facilities, gardening, everything that goes into a campus environment that we're not specifically invoiced for or charged for. Any questions about that? Okay, so those three areas are what make up your match for the SBDC program. And so when you do a quarterly invoice or when you prepare a budget, these are also broken out into these areas. For cash match, you want to make very sure that it really is non-federal programs. So there's been situations that something has had the name Cal in it, like Caltrans, or there was another Cal something, and it was actually federal funds. And so be careful about that one when you're deciding what's going to be counted as cash match. And make sure that it is for SBDC sort of related business advising services too. It needs to be in line with the mission of the SBDC program. All right, time and effort reporting, which is everyone's not favorite topic. This is about how staff are accounting for their time. If you fill out timesheets at your program, then you're fine, and that covers it for the most part. This can get a little more tricky at the community colleges where there is usually not a timesheet and people are paid by default, and then we need to have a letter of effort or some other way of documenting the percentage of time that SBDC staff have spent on the program, because it's usually a portion of their time. They might spend a portion on the SBDC grant and a portion on other programs. So number one, all employees charged to federal grants must maintain time and effort reporting. It does not matter what type of funding. Any employee funded with federal funds must document that time they spend working on the grant's objectives to demonstrate that the amount budgeted and claimed is accurate. What that's kind of saying is if I spend 25% of my time on that's charged to the federal grant, and then I do something else completely unrelated. Maybe I teach in the business department. I still need to document 100% of my time and show what I was doing for 100% of my responsibilities at Humboldt State University, for example, at my host. Time and effort reporting under the SBDC program is a method of documenting the work time devoted to the federally sponsored grant and is expressed as a percentage of professional activity devoted to the SBDC. Each SBDC recipient should develop a time and effort certification form. also known as an activity and effort certification form if the host institution does not have one. So best case scenario is that every host institution has a time and effort policy. They have developed a form. The SBDC grant is not their only federal program. I would assume, and especially for larger organizations. And so there should be a standard type of activity reporting certificate that would be used across all the federal programs. If that is not the case, then the SBDC program needs to develop something along with their host. And it might be a time for, okay, their host needs to figure out what is going to be the policy and have it apply for the SBDC program. And if they do get other federal grants in the future, then they will have this set up already. The effort percentages on the activity and effort certification form must total 100%. The total of the individual effort categories cannot be greater than 100% for each activity report. So this is another area that sometimes, especially with directors, they will try to make the argument that, well, oh my gosh, I work 60 hours a week. I should be able to write down that I have 150% effort on this project. And no, unfortunately, we can't do that. It's just whatever the total is of your time, what are the portions that are devoted to each area. Any questions? Okay, so I was going to show you some examples then of forms that HSU uses, and then if you have questions, we can do that too. And yes, and I will send the PowerPoint, Mary. So get out of this and switch gears here. So new share. Okay, are you guys seeing a timesheet?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why we're having a little piece of PowerPoint in there, but all right, so this is the type of timesheet that I fill out. So HSU sponsored programs, level of effort. So I'm salaried, and so I'll have my employee name, my HSU ID number instead of my Social Security number. It says calendar year. And then there's something here where I can pull down and say which pay period. We're paid on bi-monthly, so there's 2 pay periods each month, which works really well for the SBDC program. There's a couple centers we have that have 26 pay periods, and that doesn't work as well because it doesn't break right on a calendar year, if that makes sense. So at the beginning or end of the year, you might have a couple days that the pay periods are overlapping 2016 and 2017 or 2015 and 2016, which can be a difficulty. And then here I can choose if I'm benefited or non-benefited, because those benefits are calculated at a different rate. And then I'm going to put in my sponsored programs, because I'm grant funded, what percentage of time. And if I did, as an example, if I taught in the business department, that would be a stateside job. And so my time and effort would not be documented on this form. This is only for a grant funded position. So I would end up putting 100% here for myself. And I mean, I guess I can just do this, but I would, let's see, it would, oh, why is it? Enter, oh, the salary. Okay, so it'd be the dollar amount. So it'd be, yeah, if it was $2,000 or whatever it is. And then it would be the project name. So each of our projects have a name as well as a number that we were talking about. And then our department has a specific department ID that we also reference. And then this can be split out by, okay, I worked 50% on, or oh, percentage, why is this? I obviously don't do this all the time. Let's see. Percentage effort. So is that gonna work? Okay. So I could say 5% effort on this. And then on a different project, I could say 20, why is it? 25% effort. Okay, 25% effort. And we can do up to 3 projects apparently. And it'll keep breaking it out and it'll do gross earnings down here. And then we'll document our sick leave, vacation, personal holidays are the options. So that's one way to do it. Another form that someone who is an hourly employee would fill out is, let me get into that, if I can. All right, so hopefully you're seeing a non-student timesheet, and this would be an hourly employee timesheet. The one thing that's a little bit problematic here is that there's only one project that you can list. So if people needed to work on a couple different projects, they would have to fill out a couple different timesheets. So that's kind of a hassle about that. And you have to put down how many hours on Monday, for example, that you worked and that you had vacation and that you had sick time.
Sean.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, we're just seeing the file list. I think the timesheet opened up in another window.
Oh my goodness. Sorry, guys. Okay. Let's see this here. New share. Okay.
Okay.
Is that working?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So employee name. So Monday, and then you would write down hours worked, vacation taken, sick leave used, etc. And it would total per week. And this is where I was saying you can only enter one project name at a time. So it's kind of a hassle. But that is it. And then it auto totals for you. So less chance of, adding errors, etc. for staff. Has the employee signature and then the approved project signer for the grant. And then if it was, for me, for example, I'm an approved project signer, but I need to get a 1-up signature so that I'm not signing my own timesheet. Okay. So then one last example to show you is, let's see. I'm going to do what a level of effort looks like at HSU. And that, okay, can you guys all see an effort certification statement?
Yes.
Okay. So this, I'm trying to see if I can, I'm not sure if I can make it bigger or not. Maybe I can a little bit. Yeah. All right. So if someone does work on stateside, and I'm thinking for community colleges as an example, if someone has another project that they're working on that's on the state side and then also on a grant area, they would fill out something like this. It's called effort certification statement. You have the employee's name, the department, the term, and I mean, this is just HSU's example, but William, you feel free to chime in here because you're the one who actually is more involved with this. I'm not sure how often we do this. Do we do this annually or every 3 months, or it looks like every semester maybe. So then the estimated distribution of effort for the project. So right here is the university effort, and so that they're an instructor. And then right here is the sponsored programs, and that it's 15%. And there could also be another auxiliary. So we also have a different auxiliary, which is called an advancement center, university advancement. And so then that all totals to 100%. And it's signed here. And there's some instructions here if people need the instructions. So yeah. Any questions about that? And just see if I can. Okay, well that was all I had. So if anyone has questions, please let me know. Okay, well, so we will keep this as a recording and send it out to people if they weren't able to make it. And yeah, thank you for joining today.